Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is James Lee. I'm here to speak with you on the topic of racial discrimination in society. Racial discrimination today obviously still exists. It's existed for a very long time in our country. Our country, you could say, was almost founded on it since slavery. However, in the past, we have been making lots of progress since the civil rights movement with Malcolm X and MLK and his infamous "I Have a Dream" speech. We have made progress into the 21st century. Now, starting back in the early 1960s, the civil rights movement was very popular. It was a movement to end racial inequality, right? And it came up with some great new laws and decisions, such as the Brown v. Board decision and the Civil Rights Act of 1964, in which the Brown v. Board decision outlawed segregation and said that segregation was not equal. Separation could not be equal. Civil Rights Act of 1964, it was basically outlawing discrimination in public areas. Although these new laws have helped us to move into the 21st century and turn away from social discrimination, it still exists today in certain forms. Now, racial discrimination in the workplace. Now, racial discrimination can affect people from getting hired to a job or getting into certain institutions or getting the scholarships, the money, the FAFSA that they need based on their race. Now, when you file an application, there is almost 90% of the time a box in which you get to check out your race, whether it's white or black, Asian or Hispanic, either one of those, you check it out. And the judge who looks at your application is able to make a decision, maybe or may not be based on your race. However, we can't prove that, they make certain decisions like that, but we have to acknowledge that it can exist to a certain degree. Obviously, it's against the law to discriminate like that. However, certain employers have hidden agendas, institutions have hidden agendas, etc. Racial profiling in the law. From 2012 to 2015, African American accounted for 85% of vehicle stops, 90% of citations, 93% of the arrests, and they only account for 52% of the total population of the city of Ferguson, the city in which Michael Brown was shot, that infamous case that we heard about a year ago or so. Obviously, numbers can lie for the most part, but we have to acknowledge that they exist. And when it comes from a small city like this, it's generally accurate. Did you know that 1 in 4 African males are currently or have been incarcerated at one point in their life? 1 in 36 Hispanic males have been incarcerated as well, compared to 1 out of 106 white men. 4 out of 10 Americans are unfavorable of Islam. 40% of Americans believe that if a person is Islamic, that they are more likely to be aggressive and more likely to be violent. 2%, only 2% of Americans truly understand and can say that they are knowledgeable about the religion. 2%. Now, this is about to take a turn, because I know when you first heard me speak, you thought that I came here to speak with you about racial discrimination with ethnic minorities. However, I don't see that as the case. There's obviously problems, but we are working on them, and they will get better. I'm here to speak to you about racial discrimination towards the white man. White privilege does exist. We must acknowledge that white privilege exists. However, do not be fooled, reverse racism also exists. Obviously, it's not to the extent that minorities face, but it's a issue that none of us have really taken a stand for because they're the majority of the country. We cannot be hypocrites. First, we can't generalize the whole population based on the action of one person. Meaning, if someone who is white is racist, we cannot take that out on the entire population. And that is what the general population does. Now, white privilege exists. However, I would like to move on to a famous case that has been one of my all-time favorites. If you could go, one more. Fisher versus University of Texas. In 2013, Abigail Fisher, a young senior in high school, applied to the University of Texas. However, she didn't get accepted. Claiming she met all appropriate requirements for acceptance with her 3.59 GPA and her 1380 out of 1600 SAT scores respectively, were qualifying. However, she claims that she wasn't accepted because of her skin tone. The court ruled in favor of UT and said that Abigail Fisher could not prove that. However, you must think, certain schools, certain institutions must reach a diversity quota, a number that they must reach in order for that university to look good. Does that make sense? The university must have, to a certain degree, a certain extent of diversity in there for the university to look accepting, for the university to look proper, for a university to look progressive. However, obviously, we cannot always prove a university's racial discrimination towards white people. We can automatically assume, basically, on our own education and our own knowledge of these certain basic needs for a university to be able to realize that certain white students are affected by this. A university is more likely to accept a minority with grades that are lower than that of a white student based on their race because of how the university needs to meet their certain quota. Racism still exists today no matter your skin tone. So we must all look to it as in we can all be racist. Have you ever heard someone say, I'm black, I'm Asian, I'm Hispanic? I can't be racist. You can. You can be racist. However, you just don't see it because society has not brought your attention to it just yet. Does that make sense? The time to believe any single race is superior and that a whole generalization of a group of ethnic minorities or the majority of the people is over. The time to realize that racial prejudice can exist no matter who you are. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming out here to listen to my speech. Happy New Year's, and I hope you all drive home safe.